You often wonder, where does a visionary come from? How are they made?
Leadership, almost without exception, requires one to make choices that are going to make some folks happy and some folks unhappy.
He just did what he had to do.
And Maynard concluded that if I don't stand up now and put my foot down, it's not going to change. It will be as it has been.
He said, I will not build this airport if minorities couldn't be included.
He knew that certain things needed to be done, and he believed that he had to be the one to do them.
Icon, visionary, leader, champion. There is one monumental man in the city of Atlanta's rich history who embodies these words: Maynard Holbrook Jackson Jr. Former Mayor Maynard Jackson was the first African American to serve as a mayor of a major southern city. He was a man who operated under a simple premise: opportunity, prosperity, and equality for all. Maynard Jackson was the right man at the right time for the city of Atlanta. He helped heal the still tender wounds of a city bruised in the grip of racial injustice, and though many decades have passed since Maynard Jackson served the citizens of Atlanta, those whom he led, mentored, and inspired still hold fond memories of the man, his landmark policies, and his commitment to inclusion for all.
Mayor Jackson influenced my decision to enter into politics because he was an outstanding example when I was growing up in the city of Atlanta as a boy. I don't believe that there has been any person who has occupied this office, certainly in the last 40 years, who is not influenced by his spirit, by his passion, and by his devotion to the city of Atlanta.
He saw it as a mandate to desegregate the city. Not just put a few people in token jobs, but to make sure that we work together as brothers, because he knew that if we didn't, we would perish together as fools, as Martin Luther King would say.
The policies that were put in place in Atlanta were duplicated in cities across the country, and even by our federal government.
This was a training ground to help not only Atlantans, but to help America cope with race. And so people who got their start here in Atlanta, like Herman Russell, are now working in Seattle, Los Angeles.
Maynard would always mean the best out of everyone. You have to give 500% if you are going to work for Maynard Jackson.
When I first became mayor, you had exaggerated black expectations, and you had exaggerated white anxieties.
One can argue that greatness was in Maynard Jackson's DNA. His father, Maynard Jackson Sr., was the first African American to seek a seat on the Dallas School Board. His grandfather, John Wesley Dobbs, the unofficial mayor of Atlanta's historic Sweet Auburn district, led Prince Hall Masons in fighting for voting rights for blacks in Georgia. With such a rich lineage, it's no surprise Maynard Jackson was a natural champion for equality and inclusion.
And so when Maynard took office, in his inaugural speech, he talked about two Atlantans, that there were the haves and the have-nots. And so there wasn't a moment that he decided that there should be inclusion in the airport. He was always about inclusion, not exclusion.
He was determined, that men, that black men, that women, that all people should have a right, should have access to equal opportunity, economic opportunity. When he became mayor, there was less than 1%, 0.5% of the contracts went to women and minorities. Of all the contracts in the city, less than 1% went to minorities and to women. Well, obviously he changed that.
Maynard Jackson's policies in Atlanta soon became national models, as the Federal Aviation Administration and airports across the country began to embrace diversity. AMAC was formed as a way to carry forth Maynard Jackson's vision. AMAC has been promoting the inclusion of minorities and women in employment and contracting opportunities in the aviation industry for 30 years. The growth of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport is an example of the importance and necessity of minority business inclusion.
This airport, at nearly 96 million people a year, is a direct result of somebody like a Maynard said, we ought to do this for everybody, not just for a few.
Inclusion is often regarded as Maynard's greatest legacy, and I certainly agree that's his greatest legacy, but I think it was the combination of Maynard's enduring faith in his community and also his fearlessness. And at the time that he was elected, he certainly was the right man at the right time.
Maynard Jackson understood what I would call the rite of passage for the mayors of Atlanta, that this airport is probably the most important thing the city has to offer in terms of economic generation and putting this city and this region on the map. I also felt like that he didn't feel like he had to compromise anything, that he didn't have to compromise the growth of the airport, the status of the airport, in order to initiate these policies of inclusion with minorities.
Some people define leadership as the art or process of influencing others to perform a mission by providing purpose, direction, and motivation. But more broadly, I would say that leadership is the strategic use of organization, communication, and motivation of people to achieve the leader's goal and vision, and has got to be sold enthusiastically.
In addition to helping gain minorities a seat at the table, he helped many understand why they deserved such an opportunity. He saw the potential in others and why they were capable of competing, even when they didn't realize it.
Maynard made you feel that you could do things that you really were not equipped to do and possibly had no experience in doing, but had a belief and you find yourself kind of doing those. And that was the order of day around among blacks and whites. He just raised the whole level of everybody's performance.
He saw something in all of us that we weren't able to see in ourselves.
The legacy of Maynard Jackson continues to evolve.
People talk about change agents. That is what Maynard Jackson was.
The minorities that are enjoying the fruits of his labor now, every night when they pray, they should thank Maynard Jackson. And we should all be proud to be a part as we go across America. And the AMAC, wouldn't have been no AMAC if we hadn't had a Maynard Jackson.
Atlanta is now a completely different place than it was in 1974 as if you're African American, and that's a very good thing. He would be very excited and very proud of what has happened in Atlanta and how the Atlanta airport has turned out. It's an amazing facility. It's beautiful. It generates huge amounts of money for Atlanta. He'd be pleased.
And because of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, dozens of men and women have been able to start businesses that they never would have had the opportunity to start but for a man named Maynard Holbrook Jackson, who had a vision and who had the courage to back up that vision with a policy and a plan that delivered concrete results.
Politics, although not perfect, was the best available nonviolent way of changing how we live.